So, hello everyone, and welcome back to STW Sports. I'm host Samuel Wright, and I'm joined by Nottingham Forest fan Billy Britnell. Well, Billy, big news from Forest today. Chris Hughton, the first managerial casualty in the Championship in this 2021-22 season. What are your thoughts, please? And where do you see the Forest going from here?
My thought is it's not a great surprise. It won't be a great surprise for a lot of Forest supporters. You took no wins from 7 games at the start of the season. At that point, the writing's on the wall. I was hoping last night that we'd get a win. I was kind of going into that game just hoping more for Chris Hughton than for anything, just to get a win to keep him in the job. And I think it speaks volumes that Forest in the past have sacked managers and have got rid of managers for a lot less, but giving Chris Hughton a lot more time than what they've obviously given like Sabri Lamucci, for example. So you can say the writing was on the wall, really, but last night you kind of felt that in terms of the performance, that was a sacking performance. That, you came where you questioned certain areas in terms of effort and commitment, and from when you question the effort and commitment, you're always then on borrowed time as a manager, and it was a matter of time for Chris Hughton at that point. And you have to say what I will say is though, I looked over at the 2 dugouts when Forest scored, and you can see the respect Chris Hughton has of other managers as well as the Forest board. Neil Warnock didn't celebrate either of Middlesbrough goals, and I think that just shows you the respect that people have for Chris Hughton. And which is why I think the Forest board gave him more time. They've obviously looked at his CV. He has got the credentials as a good Championship manager, but for whatever reason, it's just not worked out for him at Forest this year.
Yeah, I perfectly agree with that. I mean, 2 promotions from this league, obviously, both automatic promotions as well in the past. He spent 343 days, in fact, I think it was overall, in charge of Forest. 53 games managed, 14 won, 17 drawn, and 22 lost. So not a great record there when you look at it like that. But so, in terms of it, where do you think it's gone wrong for Hughton then? Why do you think it hasn't really clicked for him?
You have to ask the question, did he always have the dressing room on side? Were the players playing for him? Did his style of play suit the players that he had? It's a way of getting Lyle Taylor and Lewis Grabban on the pitch at the same time. He played Lewis Grabban in a number 10 role, which isn't Lewis Grabban's strongest point. So it's little things like that. Maybe he could have gone a 4-4-2, played a diamond in the midfield. He could have, there's a few different things he could have done maybe to have got more out of Lyle Taylor and Lewis Grabban together if that's how he wanted to do it. And then you have to look at, as a manager, he's quite a defensive manager. Does that suit the players that he has at his disposal at Forest? And a lot of people would argue it doesn't, especially this time around with the likes of Brendan Johnson, Alex Mighton, Philip Zinkenagel, João Carvalho. These aren't defensive-minded players, and that maybe has gone against him a little bit as well. And I think you kind of look at it and go, was he the right fit? And the answer is no, it wasn't. At the time, I thought at the time this was a solid appointment for Forest. It was the man that I wanted. It was someone I wanted really to do well. And I was hoping and praying he'd turn it around. And unfortunately, that's not happened. But I think it's a number of things, looking at it. And you have to say as well, looks not really on side. Chris Hughton talks about fine margins. I think people talk about fine margins as in, the score lines and things like that, and he doesn't. He means on a wider spectrum than that. He means in terms of having COVID players available, things like that. You play Coventry City on the opening day of the season without 10 days worth of pre-season at the back end of it, and people will say, "Oh, we looked all right for an hour." Yeah, we did, but then the legs started to tire. The tiredness kicked in and lethargicness came back to the squad. Things like that. If we'd have played that in October, in a month's time, we'd probably have won that. And it's little things like that. But obviously, it's a results-based business. The results doesn't look good, and regardless of how you want to look at it, Coventry City aren't going to be in the top 6. You wouldn't have said, come the end of the season. And you look at the fixtures Forest have played. And out of those 7 games, there's probably only Bournemouth that you would put in that top 6. Everyone else is a game really that you would look at and you think, oh, I'd fancy us there. I'd fancy us, to go and get something there, or I fancy us to win at home tonight. And it's not happened. And I think it's sort of that sort of thing as well that's gone against him. And Middlesbrough aren't going to be flying high at the top of the Championship. It's it's a game that you would expect Forest to go and get something out of at home. So Bournemouth aside, none of the teams who played are going to be top 6. Blackburn will be mid-table. So that's the reason for it as well. It's not like you played Fulham, West Brom, Bournemouth, Sheffield United in these opening 6-7 games. You've not got anything from that, because I think you will go, okay, he's had all the top teams, so let's go and get some points now against the rest of the division. That's not been the case, and I think that's gone against him as well.
I think that's fair. In terms of next manager, of course, the ones rumoured right now, Steve Cooper, very heavily rumoured, and of course, Alex Neil. Who would you take right now as Forest's new manager? Who do you want, to take the club forward?
Well, Alex Neil was at the game last night. I think that's mainly where that's come from. Whether there's anything further into that, I don't know. But Steve Cooper seems to be the one that Forest are in talks with. Now, that's a complex situation in itself, because Steve Cooper, although he's left Swansea, he is still on Swansea's payroll. And Swansea wants a compensation package of around £3 million for Steve Cooper. I don't think Forest have got that sort of money. I think if they had, they might have spent it in the transfer window on deadline day. So I think I would say that's going to be possibly more agent talk, more, I think it's not as close as what I think reports are saying. And I think really when you look at it, it's not something Forest can really afford to do. And I think this could be a very, very important appointment, whoever it is. Whether Forest decide for a short-term man or for a long-term, I get the impression this is going to be a long-term appointment. It's not going to be someone who's going to come into the end of the season and galvanise the group, and like a Sam Allardyce, for example, who would come in for 6 months and do what he's got to do to keep us up and then move on. I don't see that sort of appointment. I think Forest are going to be looking for a project, and I think they're going to be looking to, first and foremost, stay up. But we're 7 games in. I think Forest ambitions will be to finish a lot higher than 21st in the Championship. I'm not talking about the playoffs. I think we have to accept that's gone due to the start that we've had. But there's no reason why I can't push on towards mid-table. And I think that's what the Forest board look for now in appointing the new manager. So it's a difficult one. There's the standout, obviously. Chris Wilder would be one that obviously stands out. I mean, took Sheffield United from League One to the Premier League, and I'll be the first to say he was unfortunate to lose his job in the Premier League. Yes, they had a very difficult situation, but it didn't improve when he left. So I would say Chris Wilder's going to be up there. But I personally look at the model Forest have got now, with the likes of Dave Murphy being there, and his track record at Barnsley was to appoint an unknown manager from possibly Germany, and so I mean, but I would be open to going down the route of having somebody that perhaps on these shores we haven't heard of. I mean, Sabri Lamouchi wasn't well known on these shores, and the Forest fans had to fire up Google and Wikipedia to find out who he was and a bit about him. And so if Forest were to go down that route again, which proved relatively successful in Sabri Lamouchi, you'd argue, I don't think it'd be a bad thing. I think whoever comes in is obviously in a difficult position. Morale's low in the dressing room, and things like that. So you've got issues there to deal with. But I think that you look at the model Forest have got, and it certainly suits a head coach role rather than a manager, you would say, which possibly is what went against Chris Hughton a little bit. He's a manager rather than a head coach. Sabri Lamouchi was a head coach. So I would like to see Forest go down that route. But one would argue that Forest would be looking for a more, someone with more Championship now, shall we say. And that's why the likes of Alex Neil's been linked, and Chris Wilder and Steve Cooper. Though Steve Cooper's not been down the bottom end of the Championship before, whereas, Chris Wilder and Alex Neil have that experience. But that's the way I would like Forest to go, really, into looking for someone with a different model, looking for someone maybe with a different approach. And obviously, Forest have got to look at someone, I would say, with a track record for improving and developing players. It's a young dressing room, this Forest dressing room. It's, you've not got a dressing room full of 30-plus-year-olds anymore. It's virtually kids. And they're going to need guidance. They're going to need development. So you're going to be looking at someone for that, which is why probably Steve Cooper's been linked in the Bell talks with Steve Cooper, because he does tick all those boxes.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good assessment. It's interesting who the new manager will be. We're going to look ahead now to the game on Saturday, away at Huddersfield Town. Huddersfield team, we've had a very strong start to the season as well, to be fair to them. Obviously, when a manager goes, it's very difficult to see what sort of team are going to come out, whether they'll be fired up and ready to prove a point, or whether they'll remain deflated and still be playing as the way they have been. Which way do you see it going for Forest on Saturday? Do you think you're expecting a response, or are you expecting still the confidence to be quite low?
I always say this: problems don't go away just because a new manager walks through the door. If that was to be the case, the problems don't go away just because Chris Hughton's left. Problems, don't go away because Steve Cooper walks through the door, or because a caretaker manager walks into the dressing room. Them problems are still there. A new manager might give him a lift, and you might get a new manager bounce for 3 or 4 games. But as we found with Chris Hughton, the problems is still there. It's paper over cracks, if you like. So, do I expect a response from Forest on Saturday? Not really, to be honest. I think that, there's complacency within the squad. I think that, morale's obviously low because of where they are on the table. They're not getting results. And you and I both know, we follow football for a long time. Confidence comes from winning football matches. And to do that, you've got to score goals. And that is something Forest, throughout Chris Hughton's time, and even before that, really, you go to the back end of Sabri Lamouchi's time, Forest couldn't score goals. And we finished 7th under Sabri Lamouchi, but we weren't creating a lot of chances. We just had clinical players. Lewis Graben took pretty much every chance that came his way that year. Joe Lolly was on form that year, and so you've got players out of form that need to find the form again. You've got confidence low. So I'm not expecting a response. It's something that is probably going to take time, possibly. And that's why you might argue that, you just had an international break for a new manager to come in and, lift the players, lift the group. But I can understand why Forest didn't make a change during an international break. And I can understand why they've not waited till the next one, which would have made more sense. That because the Championship's relentless. It's Saturday, Wednesday, and it is a hard league to maintain consistency, and which is why you very rarely see teams go on a winning run anymore of 6 or 7 games in the Championship. But in terms of Saturday's game, it's going to be tough, and I can't see Forest getting anything out of it. Mainly down to confidence and whatnot at the moment within the group. So, what am I expecting from Saturday's game? If I'm expecting a defeat, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But that's all we've got time for on STW Sports today anyway, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining me, Billy. And let's see where Nottingham Forest go from here.
Cheers, Sam. Thank you very much.